Okay, so I'm sure you guys have heard before, but well, actually, I'll preface that by saying that anybody that spent more than a couple of minutes in the land of Israel in this generation has noticed that there's a disproportionate amount of chutzpah. Has that been your experience, or is that just my experience?
Like a lot of chutzpah, people are chutzpah, you mean?
There's a lot of chutzpah.
Yes,
Right.
Machon.
I was,
Israelified.
I was told that in Germany, we had a student from Germany once that said that if a person honks their horn in their car, if it's not a moment of danger on the road, they said they get a ticket. Right. So in Israel, we honk our horns because just say Boker Tov, Shalom Aleichem. I like the way you look. I don't like the way you look. Whatever, right? You're in my way. Right. I don't have many other countries that people flash their lights if you're going too slow for them.
In Sefer, it's not that. It's not like that.
In Tzfat, it's not like that. Okay, but anyway, we noticed that Israelis are shalom shalom. Also around the world, I've done a little of my share of world traveling in different countries, and Israelis get everywhere, and they have a tremendous amount of guts, you could call it, of chutzpah, of azut, of brazenness, of fearlessness, right? You can tell the Israelis a mile away. Matter of fact, this is not chutzpah. Just once, I was in the city of Varanasi, India, and I was trying to buy a sitar. You guys know sitar, the
Sitar or guitar?
sitar. But I wanted to get one that was handmade. I didn't want to get one from a store, so I don't even know how but I got in touch with somebody, and some guy started leading me through the alleyways of Varanasi, going for like 30, 40 minutes. And I was thinking to myself, gosh, if this guy abandons me, I'm never going to make my Varanasi in India. Sorry, I didn't say that. I didn't forget the minute. In India. So if he doesn't lead me out of here, I'm never getting out. Yeah, I'm telling you, it was like unbelievable. Downstairs, under this thing, and finally you get to this underground room, and there's a sitar teacher, like a master teaching a student. And the student, I could tell that he wasn't Indian. He was maybe had dreadlocks or something. So I looked at him, and I was thinking to myself, "There's no way that this guy's not Israeli, because no other person would have made it to this place." So I told him, I said, "Shalom Aleichem." He said, "Aleichem HaShalom." Right? So there's a chutzpah. There's a chutzpah. Now, what you guys might not have heard, but you probably have heard, is that it says in the Gemara in the Masechet Sota, at the very end of Sota, there's a string of teachings over there that describes what the world is going to look like just before Mashiach comes. Ikvis of the Mashiach, that's the words here. The Ikvis of the Mashiach, which means the footsteps of Mashiach. You guys have heard that term before. And it says over there many different things. It says that young people are not going to honor old people, right? Which is something that we see today, right? That the idealization of youth, right? That old people are considered, yeah, they've finished their tafkid. By the time right there was a famous band in the '60s in England, and in the '60s the slogan was "Don't trust anybody over 30." And this guy who's a major band, he said that like he had a song that said, "I hope I die before I get old." That was the words of the song, and he said that if I'm not dead by the time I'm 30, so I'm taking it into my own hands. So now he's like 80, and he's still singing those same songs. So they asked him, like, well, why are you you said he said no, it was figurative. It was right, but we look up to the youth, right? Everybody wants to look young. Somebody turns 40, 50, they ask them, hey, how old are you? It's your birthday today. How old are you? Don't remind me, right? I want to be younger. I don't want to be older. There's some cultures in the world where people look up to the elderly, right?
They have a Harley Davidson.
Huh? There's some cultures in the world where people lie, not just kids. How old are you? I'm 3.5, 3 3/4, right? But older people, they even like to make themselves older because they value right?
If somebody has a birthday, I don't normally say, congratulations for becoming this much old, but I'm saying congratulations on surviving one more year.
Okay. So, but in any event, so that's one thing. But another thing that it says over there in Masechet Sota is that in the times before Mashiach, there's going to be a tremendous amount of chutzpah. Right? Tremendous amount of chutzpah. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that in the not just in Israel, but in the world in general. Tremendous amount of chutzpah. How would you guys translate chutzpah?
Audacity.
Audacity, right? Inappropriate nerve,
Yeah, good.
Me
Serve.
first.
Assertiveness.
assertiveness, but like
The me first mentality.
me first mentality, abrasiveness.
Like kids in a toy store.
The kids in the toy store, right?
Shamelessness.
Right, shamelessness. Right. I like that. All those are good descriptions of chutzpah. Chutzpah, I think you can even find it in Webster's dictionary now. I don't know if chutzpah is a word that's made it into.
It's already a word in English.
In English, yeah, people know what chutzpah is, right? I don't know if they can pronounce it, but chutzpah has an amazing function. Where's another time besides just before we said we're going to start the piece in just one minute, but besides in the times just before Mashiach, where's another stage in life where chutzpah yiske, where there's a tremendous amount of chutzpah, and a disproportionate amount of chutzpah within the development of a human being's lifetime?
Like teenage years?
Teenage years, adolescence, right? And it's not stam that it's like that. You know, David the Melech had questions about different parts of Hashem's creation. Why did Hashem have to create this and that? And Hashem showed him how to create them. So once, you know, when I first, as a parent, hit teenagehood with adolescence with my children, I said to Ribono Shel Olam, like, I understand everything else, but why teenage years? What's going on with teenage years? But now I have a much deeper understanding, and Rav Kook is going to give us also an explanation now. Chutzpah diikvis the Mashiach. This is Rav Kook talks about this chutzpah in several places. This is just one of the places. Let's see.
Bottom of one foot.
Right there. Chutzpah diikvis the Mashiach. Ba mipnei. Where does chutzpah come from? So Rav Kook, that's specifically the chutzpah that comes in the times just before Mashiach. It's coming from a particular place. Ba mipnei sha'olam הוכשר כבר עד כדי לתבוע את ההבנה איך כל הפרטים הם מקושרים עם הכלל. It comes because the world is already prepared. There's already a sense of readiness in the world to take up the understanding how everything, all the details of life and of creation are viewed with it, are connected with an ultimate purpose. Right, which is a very fancy sentence for saying how everything is one. Everything is within the context of one story, right? When a Jew says Shema Yisrael, what does he do? He covers his eyes. Why do we cover our eyes when we say Shema Yisrael? Because this world is a world of multiplicity. It's a world that looks like, you know, if I look at the Wall Street Journal, there's one narrative. If I look at Harvard University, there's a different narrative, together with Penn and MIT, right? If I look at Machon Meir, there's one narrative, right? If I go to a different, there seems like there's so many different stories going on. You take a video camera and go walk down the street and ask 1 million people, you know, what's the purpose of life? What's this world all about? You're going to get 1 million different answers. It's a world of multiplicity. It's not a world that looks like it's all one unified story. Yid closes his eyes. He says, I don't see this world. I'm not looking at the multiplicity of this world. I'm closing my eyes in order that I can see the oneness. Because if I'm looking at the world and the multiplicity, I don't see the oneness. I have to close my eyes in order to focus myself in my heart on the oneness of Hashem, the oneness of the story, of what's going on here. Hashem, above, before He created the world, right? When we say Hashem's name, which is Havaya, Yud Ke Vav Ke, it stands for Haya Hoveh V'Yeh. He was, He is, and He will be. Right? He's above time. Elokeinu, this world, how Hashem runs this world. Elokeinu, our God. Right? Hashem Echad, it's the same God. It's not like there was Hashem once, the clockmaker theory, you know, and now Hashem, down there's a world, and now it's a free-for-all, it's a grab bag. That's not how it works. There's one story going on here. Right? And a Yid constantly, that's the national anthem of the Jewish people, the Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Constantly reminding ourselves, right? But the reason why we have to close our eyes, that's a painful thing why we have to close our eyes, is because it's so difficult to see that in the world. And we have to shut off our intake of the stories of that the world is telling us in order to remember that, right? So, and this is how the Jewish people have lived our lives and all throughout the generations, right? Constantly replugging ourselves into that Rav Kook says, but in the end of times, just before Mashiach, there's going to be a time where the soul of the world feels we're ready for something bigger. We're finished with this multiplicity. We're finished with the dual stories, right? We want to see how every detail of our life, of my little life and of your little life, is all connected to the big picture, to the story, how it's all one, right?
Does that mean that chutzpah is a kind of like frustration?
Exactly.
You're like, I'm done with this, like that's interesting.
Exactly. And now you can understand. And now let's put that in the context. Just to speak outside for a second. For Rav Kook explains how we get out of that. What are we supposed to do with that? And what's the chutzpah coming to do? Like, why did Hashem create this place where we're frustrated, right? And for that we need the PSS Rebbe. The PSS Rebbe says in the introduction to Chovat HaTalmidim, he explains that, without going too at length in it, but he explains that something changed. And this is in the generation before the Holocaust. He said that something changed in children. It used to be that children, when they were young, as they were developing, they felt that they're like an empty vessel. I'm still young. I still need to learn. I still need to. I look up to the elders. I look up to my teachers because I still don't know how to make my way in this world, right? And so and they had a tremendous amount of respect for their elderly. He said, now what's going on? There's so much chutzpah. So he said that their souls have a sense of independence, right? Before they actually have the maturity, the mental and the spiritual and the emotional maturity to be independent, right? 13 years old, right? I think I know everything, right? Mark Twain had a line. I love that he said, when I was 18 years old, my father was the stupidest man I'd ever met. He said, it's amazing how smart he got as the years went on. Right? So, but 13, we think we know everything, right? Whatever age it is, right? But so where does that feeling come from? That feeling comes from this sense of, this is what Rav Kook is saying, that's on an individual level. I'm ready for godless. I'm ready to see how everything is in one context. But I don't get it yet. I still don't grasp it. And therefore I'm frustrated. And as for a teenager, I'm frustrated that you're treating me like a child still. Right? That's the frustration of a teenager. Well, that's because, you're driving 120 miles an hour on the highway last night. Like, that's not a responsible thing that an adult does, right? They want to be treated like an adult, but they don't have the sophistication and the maturity thank you very much, to act like an adult yet, right? Because it doesn't all make sense to them. So too, the world is ready for a greater reality. It's ready for a greater existence where we see the context and we see the unification of everything. But we're not yet there, right? So it's very frustrating. Why am I not there? Why don't we have the Geula right? Why I myself am not, right? There's a frustration, right? There's a friction between the inner desire and the feeling of readiness for something and the actual reality and our ability to grasp it. That make sense?
Amen.
Okay, back inside, Rav Kook. ואין פרט בלתי מקושר עם גודל הכללי יכול להניח את הדעת. And as long as we don't see how everything fits into the greater picture, into the context, Rav Kook says, even if there's one detail that we still don't see the connection, how it's connected with the greater context, so then it gives us no rest. It causes that frustration and that friction, right? If you've got it 75% worked out, tell me about life, and you tell me a whole philosophy of life, how everything is all unified, but there's still 25% that doesn't make sense, and so that there's still a frustration there. No, everything has to fit together. It has to be glatt, as we say in yeshivish language. It has to be 100%, perfect. Now, how are we supposed to get there? How are we supposed to see the unification and everything? So he says, Rav Kook says, if the world, meaning if the Jewish people, would be toiling in Torah, in the light of Torah, with this following way, shetitkadel haneshama haruchanit, that our spiritual souls should be elevated by our learning. It's not a technical learning just so I can know exactly how to put the pot on the plata on Shabbat, right? Where exactly do I have to place the candles for Chanukah, right? and in what order do I make the brachas? It's not just a technical thing. It's true. There's a technical side. That's part of it. That's a detail. But that detail is part of the greater. What's the secret here? What am I doing here? What's really happening? What am I supposed to feel right now? How do I get myself to feel that? Right? How do I elevate my soul that when I light my Hanukkah candles, you guys know that we're gonna, if we have time at the end, we're gonna learn hopefully a piece of Sas Emes on Hanukkah. But there's another piece that he says that every single Jew, when you light his Hanukkah lights, he's like Aaron HaKohen. He's like Aaron HaKohen lighting the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. In your own spiritual Beis HaMikdash, you at that moment have the same power as Aaron HaKohen going into the physical Beit HaMikdash, the Mishkan, lighting the menorah, right? But I might not feel it. I might not realize that. I might not know what I'm saying, right? So what my intention when I'm learning Torah should be not just that I know what to do, or because this is good for the world and I believe that, but that my soul should be elevated in my learning. And my soul should be elevated in such a way that I grasp the connection between the details and the big picture of what's going on, of what the tachlis is, right? Each person on their level, right? And it might not be something that you can write a book about or describe to somebody else, right? Like Rabbi Nachman says in the very beginning of Sichot Oran, that when it comes to inner spiritual experiences, there's certain things that one person can't communicate to another person. Right? It's impossible to transfer that over. It's something that's so intimate and private and personal that there's no way that I could put it into words, right? So a person can have a deep understanding on that level. But anyway, that should be the intention that you have when you're learning. That should be your kavanah, right? So he said. So Rav Kook says, if the world would be learning Torah in that way, hayta HaTeshuva v'tikun ha'olam haba v'ayada mofia v'yotzai lapol. So then, tshuva and tikkun ha'olam, the fixing of the world, the rectification of the world that comes with tshuva and comes because of tshuva would already come and appear in the world, and would come out into fruition, right? Everybody with me? How you got that? Meaning that itself, if we would learn Torah in that way, so that would bring us to tshuva. That would bring the world to tshuva, right? Everything would be in context, right? Okay, continuing in Rav Kook, he says, "Aval kevan shehitrashlut garma." But since our I don't know how to say this other one, like laziness, but slacking off, our lack of hard work. What's another word? You guys have better than I am. Slack. There's one word that's
Struggling? What kind of word?
slacking. Like the hitrashlut means negligence, maybe, right? Because of our negligence is caused she'or Torah pnimit, that the inner Torah, the light of the inner Torah, hata'un, and this is the punchline here in this sentence. Hata'un ramamut ukdushat smit. It's not just enough to just learn inner Torah, to learn deeper parts of Torah. We can learn Hasidut all day long. We can learn Kabbalah all day long, understanding and seeing on an intellectual level, and even be able to write a whole treatise about the deeper parts of Torah. But that's not really what it's about. It's not a philosophy. It's a way of life. It requires romamut, elevation, and holiness. That we sanctify ourselves, that we elevate ourselves. We become holy people, right? We not only do we learn the deeper parts of Torah, but we elevate ourselves in accordance with the deeper Torahs that we're learning, right? So he says, since our negligence has caused us that this part of the Torah and that elevating of ourselves that goes with it, lo fia ba'olam karu, still has not appeared in the world, meaning we haven't done that as a nation. בתביעה של סידור חיים כאלה, שהפרטים יהיו מובנים במובן הכלל בזמן כזה, שהגמר של גילוי האור וסלילת הדרך להבנה הזו עדיין לא בא. ומזה בא הריסה נורא. So he says, I'm going to say the sentence maybe backwards. says this is what's caused this destruction. The destruction meaning this pain. The world, the pain of that, the fact that the world still looks like it looks, right? All you have to do is open up any newspaper, and that's enough to see how broken the world still is, right? And it's upsetting. Okay, we're used to it. There's a certain level we just kind of accept it, and there's also a certain level that we might not believe that it could get better, right? We have to work on that. As a Jew, we're not allowed to meet Yesh in that way, right? But says Rav Kook, since we haven't, as a nation, we haven't learned Torah in this way, and we haven't elevated ourselves in this way, which would cause that all the details of everything that we do and everything in this world is all, we see the connection between everything, right? And therefore, that light has not been revealed in the world. And therefore, we don't even see how that pathway is being plowed, is being prepared for us, right? From that comes from this terrible pain, right? And the chutzpah, right? Especially among adolescents, right? Adolescents are born into this world, especially I'm talking about from Jewish teenagers, born into a world where we're talking about redemption and we're talking about elevation, we're talking about spirituality and all this stuff, and they take like 2 steps out of the Beit Midrash, and they see what the world looks like out there, and they're in tremendous pain. They might not be able to say that, understand it, or even say it to themselves, right? But they feel it. They feel this dissonance between what they feel we're ready for. We're ready to take the steps. We don't know exactly what that means, but we're ready to do it. We're ready to be most nefesh for it, and the world is still so broken. And like, the world of the adults, right? And the adults are also a bunch of kids that also just inherited a world that was very broken in this way, right? Okay. And we, Rav Kook says, we have a obligation to use. We need. It's necessary for us to use this exalted medicine, this exalted remedy, which is an elevation of spirituality, of our spirituality, right? Not just during this time, especially like during the war right now. And all the nations always team up on Am Yisrael, and there's a double standard, and all the same classic things, And nobody has a problem with anything that Hamas does, but everybody has a problem with what Israel doesn't do, right?
It's such high standards for us. Hamas is expected of them to be
right.
horrible.
And it's all ludicrous, and it's so ridiculous, and they know it. They know it just as well as we know it. And usually, where the state of Israel is just so weak in arguing our case, but in this time their acts were just so heinous that you have to just be a total, I don't know what to say, to not be able to argue it, right? And yet still the world is still coming down on us, right? But here's the thing. This is the point that I'm not trying to come down on the Hasbara of Medinat Yisrael, saying like, if we think that we're going to convince them through intellectual arguments and political arguments and the history of warfare arguments, and we're going to show them how many times the UN has made resolutions against Israel as opposed to the rest of the world, and human rights desecrations that have taken place in these other countries, the ones that are actually voting. And so, like, if we think that we're going to convince the world through that, it's such a big mistake, gentlemen, right? Haraya, we've been trying to do it for like 2,000 years. It's not working, right? It's just not working. And like in Baruch Hashem, now there's a lot of people in all the other different spheres in this country that are kind of waking up. Like, wait a minute, something's wrong here. Maybe these people really just hate us, or maybe there's something different about us, right? Why we have to be different than everybody else, right? Rav Kook says if the medicine that the world is waiting for, right, is spirituality. It's for us to elevate our spirituality. I'm going to read those words again. We have no other choice. It's necessary for us to use this exalted remedy, which which is the elevation of our power of spirituality. That's the medicine. This sick world, right? You're not by joining the Peace Corps and joining the UN lobby or whatever. I'm not saying not to do all those things, wonderful things, but just don't think that that's going to bring the final tikkun, right? Of course, every good thing that anybody does is contributing wonderful things to the world, right? But that's not what the world is lacking right now. That's not what it's worth. Rav Kook says, here's the medicine right here. Ad asher haderech ech להבין ולשער את הקישור של כל ענייני הדעות והמעשים הטהורים עם הכלל היותר עליון, יהיה דבר מובן ומוצע בדרך ישרה, על פי הרגשות הנפשות השכיחות. It's a long sentence. He says, and elevate his spirituality until the level, until all of his midot and his actions and his Torah action, so to speak, your halacha, the way you wear your tzitzit, and the way you speak, and the way you relate to your wife, and the way you daven, and the way you vote, and the way you walk down the street, and the way you eat your falafel, right? And the way you say Shema Yisrael, and the way you're ready to give your life for God, and the way that you love your fellow Jew in your heart, right? All those things are one. There's no. Each one is not viewed as a separate thing, a separate item which is out of context. No, it's all one thing. I'm doing one thing in my life. I'm doing one thing in my life, and that's what I'm doing. And it's all seen. It's all seen, but not in a way where I have to, like Shema Yisrael, that I have to close my eyes to be able to renew my intellectual understanding of this, but that it's apparent, and it's clear. And it's that's my natural feeling, right? As opposed to right now, we have to struggle to see that everything is one. That's our whole fight. We're constantly saying Shema Yisrael and closing our eyes, right? And there's lots of things in the world that we have to close our eyes to in order to be able to hold on to that mentality, right? And we can lose it very easily. It dissipates. It slips, right? You know that great feeling at the end of Yom Kippur? That beautiful feeling, right? And then you feel like, right after you make Avdallah, you feel it's already starting to slip away, and you're trying to hold on to it, right? You have to work and think about it. You had needed all of Elul, and Rosh Hashanah, and the 10 days of Tshuva, and Yom Kippur, and all the tefillah, just to get to that clarity. And now here it is, it's slipping away right away. Wait a minute, give me something, So Shem says, grab the lulav and esrog. That's going to help you, right? That'll help you bring it in your heart, right? But on that. It's not right at the end of Yom Kippur. If somebody's going to give you a cheeseburger, with a nice slice of bacon on top, right? He says, "My holy brother, this is so delicious. Just take one bite, right?" You're going to laugh. You're going to laugh. If a person says, "Look at this inappropriate thing," right? Right at the end of Yom Kippur, you're still wearing your talis, you're still sweaty from all the davening, right? And somebody says, "Look at this inappropriate thing." Or, hey, let me tell you about Yaakov, and he starts speaking of Lashon Hara. Your natural reaction, your emotions, your mind is like, you can't stand. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? I don't want that. But like a week later, a month later, we're not so sure. It's a little bit more difficult, right? I don't have this natural disgust from it, right? Cook is saying we wanted our natural feelings and mentality. And the natural suggestion of my mind should be this oneness, seeing in this context, which will come only when there is an elevation in this spirituality, and therefore we have to elevate our spirituality, or else we're never going to get there. We're not going to get there through intellectual gymnastics. We're not going to get there through any other way, and we're certainly not going to get there through the UN recognizing us. There shouldn't be any, right? They're not going to cause it. It's going to come from us, only from us. Right? And then the power of life, of spiritual life in action, not just spirituality has to be separate from action, meaning in this world, right? No, in action, ubadeah, and with midot, and with clarity, is going to come and be revealed in the world. Utshuva klalit tachel letet et pirya, and then general tshuva of the world will start to give its fruits. You see how Rav Kook spells it out, and he maps it out for us so clearly. If we elevate our spirituality, and we start putting everything into context, right? I can't. If I struggle with lashon hara, if I struggle with seeing people in a negative way, if I struggle with inappropriate speech, if I struggle with inappropriate sight, if whatever my struggle is, and each one of us has our struggles, none of us are free in this world from my struggle. Whatever my struggle is, right? When I'm davening, I'm a big tzaddik, and when I'm here, I'm not a little bit less than that, right? So I say to myself, I have to make these things one, right? But not, sometimes the conclusion is, well, if I fell, it should be clear what I'm saying. I don't want anybody to misunderstand it. The Yetzer Hara comes and says, oh, you're such a tzaddik, you're davening Shmona Esrei, and then you look at this. So you shouldn't daven Shmona Esrei because it's not appropriate for you. No, afuch. Shmona Esrei, that's me. Here, there's a Yetzer Hara here, right? There's a Yetzer Hara here. I fell. But I have to put this in the context. When is it that I fall? When is it that I say inappropriate things? Is when I'm tired, when I'm off guard. So I have to make sure that I prepare myself. I have to work on myself that when I'm tired, I'm more aware, I'm more cognizant, right? They call it hangry. You guys ever heard of hangry? Right? I'm so hungry that I'm angry, right? So couples, guys, I'm a marriage therapist. So many times, first we're in a fight. Let's just check. Is one of us tired? One or both of us tired? Is one or both of us hungry? Right? 90% of marital battles are solved with be well fed and take a schluff. That's it, right? So, but I want that even my tired moments should be connected to God. I want that even my end of the day moments, my or whatever it is, my challenged moments, right? I've got trauma, I've got triggers, I've got pain, right? I want that. All of that has to be put into this context. I want to unify it all. That's like you guys remember we talked about the difference between katnut and gadlut. Katnut, like a child, there's no connection from one moment to the next. He's my best friend. I'm never going to talk to him again. He's my best friend, right? 1 second later. But gadlus, a gadol, an adult, and the greater the person is, the more everything in his life is within the context of what he's doing. It's all one miksha achas. It's one Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Right? And so Rav Kook says once we're doing that, Am Yisrael, individual Yidden, you think nobody's noticing. You think you're not having an effect, right? It's not true. When we do that, so then it brings about, like Rav Kook says, tshuva klalit. Then the general tshuva, the whole world is going to wake up. That's how they're going to wake up. God bless the state of Israel that they make so many amazing inventions, USB sticks and all kinds of wonderful things and medical things, and should continue to do that. That's not going to bring the Geula. It's all wonderful. That's not what's going to convince the nations. That's not what's going to start the wave, right? It's all beautiful. It's all beautiful stuff. I'm not saying that they shouldn't do it. I'm saying that and Chalila, nobody should think that I'm being mizalzel, that I'm how do you say mizalzel? Shaming, or, right? To minimize the greatness of all those things and all the contributions that everybody does. They're great. I'm just saying that there's so much of an overemphasis that, like, look at like Israel. Right now, I'm not trying to also do this, but look at all the contributions we've made to the world, right? Givaldik, it's wonderful. But the ultimate contribution that we're really supposed to be making to the world is this: spirituality. Right? We're a nation of God. We're the Mamlechet Kohanim, a nation of priests, of Kohanim, to teach godliness to the world. We ourselves have to be living godliness. We ourselves have to be living in connection to God. Lives of dveikus, lives of connection with God. That when you walk in the room, they should see. Right? Like it says, like the prophet says, that they're gonna see that the name of God is called upon you. Right? The Gemara says that that's talking about your tefillin. When you're wearing tefillin, you guys know basic halachas of tefillin. You're not allowed to mesiach your dat. You're not allowed to remove your from your mind that you're wearing tefillin. So in the halachas, brother, you should touch your tefillin every couple of moments to remind yourself that you're wearing them, because you're not allowed to think about inappropriate things when you're wearing tefillin. And really, according to the letter of the law, we're really supposed to be wearing tefillin all day long. The minhag in ancient Israel, and there's some people that still do it today, they wear their tefillin all day long. What are you talking about? You're not allowed to think inappropriate thoughts. You're not allowed to say inappropriate things, right? So how am I supposed to have a day? That's exactly the point. That's the point. You're supposed to be a mamlechet kohanim all day long thinking about God. all day long. Connect. That doesn't mean not involved. Doesn't mean there's never a halacha that you wear tefillin and you don't go to work because you're wearing tefillin. No, you're a doctor. You're seeing patients unless you're touching different parts of their body which are right. You're not allowed to touch with tefillin or whatever. So I'll go to work. I go to the makolet. I'm selling food. I got my tefillin on. I'm connected to God. There's no difference. Work is separate from shul. Work is God's not here, right? My actions in my store, my actions in my business, my actions walking down the street, driving down the street are not within that. It's all supposed to be like that, right? So when it says the nations will see you and will see that the name of God is called upon you and will fear you. It says they'll be in awe of you. It's that consciousness. It's not just that you're wearing tefillin. Today I can take a picture when I'm wearing tefillin, right? And I always say picture. I'm remembering a story that you guys know the first spiritual leader, Yimach Shemo v'Zichro of Hamas, was a sheik. They killed him like 15 years ago or something, but I forget his name.
The guy in the wheelchair?
Huh? That's it, right?
He was in a wheelchair.
Was he in a wheelchair? I don't know. But anyway, there's a picture of a particular rabbi that used to meet with different sheiks and try to talk to them how to he said, let's try to fix the Israeli-Arab issue through spiritual discussion as opposed to political discussion. Okay. But so somebody didn't like that, and they took there's a picture of him. He used to come to these meetings with these sheiks and he would wear his talis and tefillin, and so somebody had a picture of him and they showed it to Rav Mordechai Eliyahu. That's how, and they were trying to give the Rav's opinion on the fact that he's meeting with this guy who's a known Jew hater and had Jewish blood on his hands, and so the Rav looked at it and he said his tefillin are puzzle. So people thought like, whoa, what? The Rav, he's saying that he so much didn't like this. He said, no, it's tefillin are puzzle. He said, how does the Rav know? From a picture. And he said, look at the smile on the sheik's face. Isn't it interesting? He said that smile. He said if his tefillin were kosher, so then there's no way that person wouldn't have a little bit more yira, a little bit more koved rosh, a little bit more sensitivity, spiritual, right? Oh, of him. It was a very light-hearted smile. So then when they checked, then his tefillin were puzzle actually. From this picture, right? So anyway, I was just remembering that, so that's why I caught myself saying, take a picture of me in my tefillin. Anyway, the point is that the purpose of the tefillin is specifically that, and the purpose of our lives is specifically that. And if we're living in that way, so then Yiru Mimeka, then they're going to have of all of us, and then they'll see the name of God is called upon us. Okay, do you want to do for a couple of minutes? Let's do a little piece on Hanukkah to get us ready for Hanukkah today. Okay, I got here one of my favorites, the Sfas Emes. This is actually also one of Rav Kook's, happens to be one of Rav Kook's favorites. Rav Kook wouldn't go anywhere without Sfas Emes. One time he left Yerushalayim to go to Yafo or something, and he got about 20 minutes on the road, and he realized he left his Sfas Emes. He turned back. Right? Okay. So just one little piece. There's so much here. We can do Sfas Emes for like a year just on Hanukkah. Okay, here we go. Says the Sfas Emes. Hanes de Chanukah haya be'or. Behu limtzo ha'hara gnuza gam b'choshech v'galut. We'll see. Maybe we'll find a deep connection between this and what we just learned. The miracle of Hanukkah, says the Sfas Emes, was a miracle of light. And that is to find, meaning, right? It wasn't just physical light of the menorah. There's a spiritual light. And it says that's to find an illumination that's hidden within the darkness and within galus, within exile. Exile means light is covered up by darkness, right? It's not in its place, right? It's not revealed, right? ובזה יש לומר מה שאמר אדוני אבי זקני מוירי ז"ל. This is what my grandfather of blessed memory said. Al Gemara de Bepurim lo kavu Hallel. You guys notice that on Purim we don't say Hallel. You guys know why? Anybody remember hearing a reason why? The Gemara asks, Purim is such a happy day, you know. Rosh Chodesh is great, right? But Purim, the one day of the year you would think we should say Hallel, right? We had a tremendous miracle. Our lives were saved. The Jewish people were saved. We celebrate with tremendous simcha. Let's say Hallel. But they specifically said we're not going to say Hallel on this day. De'akati avde de'achashverosh. Because we were still slaves of Achashverosh. It wasn't a full. There's a whole discussion there in the Gemara, different opinions. But the final opinion of there in the Gemara Megillah is that since we were still servants of Achashverosh, it wasn't like a real Geula. It wasn't like a full Geula. Right? The redemption was up until a certain point. You know, we still couldn't, just be exactly who we were. Go back to Eretz Yisrael. So too here, in the miracle of Hanukkah, it's true that we kind of got a level of independence, but still the Greeks were still around, and the Greeks were still running the world, and we still had to contend with the Greeks. It wasn't like right, it wasn't a complete wipeout. It wasn't like when we left Egypt. No more Egypt. Egypt was totally destroyed. They built themselves afterwards, or whatever. But now, so it's therefore it says this Fasemis. It says it should be that also on Hanukkah that we don't say Hallel if that should be the case. But we know that these days were given Hallel lehodot, right? These are Dafka days of Hallel, and we say the Hallel, the complete Hallel, with a bracha. Ula'ana la'yedei nes hirgishu shehem avdei Hashem. So he says something very, very deep and beautiful. He says that the miracle that happened here in Chanukah was such that they had a feeling. Hashem opened up for them a feeling in their hearts, a deep feeling that they're servants of God. Afshayu b'galut, even if they're still in the exile, even meaning they still knew that it still wasn't a complete redemption. We still didn't have complete control. B'galut zeh shayu b'galut. And that itself was a miracle. And even within the darkness of the exile of the Galut, spiritual Galut, they still knew that they were servants of God. You hear how subtle it is. That he's calling that a nes. That's a miracle, right? It's a miracle that a Jew can be in this world with all the craziness of this world, and with all the positioning that a Jew has in this world today, right, or any of our difficult times, and he knows I'm a servant of God, period. I'm a servant of God, right? Thinking of stories of the Holocaust, of several stories that I know of amazing Mesiras Nefesh that people just, even in the camps, and they wouldn't give up. They wouldn't give up their pride and their absolute commitment and identity. I'm a Jew, right? Amazing stories of people being killed, like screaming, "Ich bin a Yid, ich bin a Yid." I'm a Jew, and I don't bow down, and I don't, right? Totally giving their lives. That itself is a miracle that there could be such a thing, right? That there was zochah to have a feeling, even though it's not so clear and apparent, like we were speaking in that piece of Rav Kook, that still that we have a feeling that, right, that I'm a servant of God, be'emes. And this also lasted throughout the generations. It's not just in the time of Hanukkah. At that time, they had a tremendous awakening, right? We're servants of God. We're not servants of the Greeks. And Rav Akiva Tatz once said that, imagine like America coming with their stealth bombers and a group of Hasidim coming out of Mea Shearim with sticks to fight them, right? That's what it was like. The Chashmonaim, like there was no way on earth in natural means that they would be able to conquer this army, right? It's the biggest, most successful, strongest army, also in numbers, also in quality, right? And they were just one family of Kohanim. How much, then it's not like they had like years and years of military training. They were lighting menorahs and bringing sacrifices in the Beit HaMikdash, right? So there's a tremendous awakening in that time, but the amazing thing is that it lasted for the generations, right? That's something that's above nature. It's above nature. A Jew's ability to feel that he's connected to God and that he's a servant of God no matter what and above everything. That itself is above nature. That's a miraculous. We think it's kind of like, well, that's how we're supposed to be, right? But the fact that you can feel that way in your heart, that in itself is miraculous. It's a miracle. And this is what we say in Mao's Tzur. You guys know that it says B'nei Bina. B'nei Bina is the sages of that time. Yemei Shmona Kavu Shiru Nanim. Right, you guys, another part of Mao's Tzur, that they established that for 8 days they established song and celebration for us, right? V'yesh ledayek dehav lelemema shmona yamim. So he says, and everybody talks about this, that it should have said for 8 days, but it doesn't say for 8 days. Shmona yamim. It says yamei shmona, days of 8. You hear the difference? You guys hear the difference in Hebrew? Shmona yamim is 8 days. Yamei shmona is days of 8. Mao yamei shmona, says the Sefer. What does that mean? V'nira shehem yamim v'chinat shmini. That means these are days where the nature of these days is the 8th level. You guys know the number 8 means above nature. 7 in Judaism is everything that's natural, cycles and everything. 8 is above nature. So these are days where the whole essence of these days is shmona, is above nature. Shelamala me'ateva u'b'chol yom yesh b'chinat shmona. And every single day of these 8 days has this amazing ability for a person to be able to recognize his closeness with Hashem and his relationship with Hashem and his commitment to that, and that's it. That's what he's doing in this world, right? So if you connect it to what we were learning before in Rav Kook, how we were saying how a Jew during these times we still have to close our eyes to the world, right? To be able to connect back to that unification, right, and not get confused by the multiplicity. But in the future, it's just going to be our natural instinct, like Yom Kippur, like Ne'ilah, right? So it says as Fasem is that these days that are Yemei Shmone, that these are the days where you can actually tap into that and feel that. That's the nature of these days, right? And therefore, when you have that, when you really feel that you're serving the God, and you're not just like making believe, you're not just pretending and trying, right? So then all you want to do is sing to God. The days of Hallel. So B'ezrat Hashem, we should be zoche. Each one of you guys, Kohanim Gdolim, lighting your own menorah, your own Chanukiah, those lights. That one more thing. It says in Sefer Kavi Yashar that a very famous Sefer from about 400 years ago, that every mitzvah that a Jew does, he creates an angel. Create a spiritual. We spoke about that before, right? When we were learning from the Ramak. Right, for those who remember, that you create a spiritual being, and that spiritual being he sings before God. He does his thing, and it says that when you come to do the mitzvah, and especially when you make the bracha over the mitzvah, so all those angels come down and they surround the person who's about to make this bracha, and they listen intently to the bracha that he makes, and they answer Amen. That's why it says that the gematria of malach, of angel, is the gematria of Amen. Right, and so it says you should have that kavana. Realize you're not just not making a bracha nobody hears, right? Or maybe your roommate here, Machon Meir, hears it, right? You got a whole slew for all those Hanukkah lights that you lit before, right? They're all coming down and saying Amen to your bracha as you're entering into the base, your own personal base of Mikdash. I wish everybody a beautiful, beautiful Lechtig Hanukkah. You should feel the light, you should feel the elevation, feel your closeness with Hashem. And B'ezrat Hashem, these Yemei Shmona should lead us until the Yom Shekulo Shabbos.